Ladies and gentlemen of the Projectbodybuilding.com audio and visual radiance. This kind of stole that from Phil Britton when I was 20 back in Michigan. I'd hear that every day. I don't think he'll know, so I don't think he'll mind. Episode 2 of my weekly Q&A, Projectbodybuilding.com. I did manage to make it through the wedding a week ago. Don't have family in the house anymore. Don't have Mexicans on the roof next door. And the guy running his motorcycle up and down the road. Of course, I guess I don't know. There could be Mexicans on the roof. And a guy running his motorcycle down the road. I'm indoors today because Denver, Colorado weather is shitty. It is a balmy 60, 65 maybe today. Wet, dreary. So I took it inside. I'm sitting in the world headquarters of Team Skip, otherwise known as my home office. Anyway, if you hear, I've got Animal Kingdom here in the house. All the kids are at school, but I have my bird back here, so if anybody does pull in, my daughter comes home, the bird's gonna freak. The dogs may as well, or the cat, or shit, I don't know. Anyway, bear with me. I'm going to get into the questions here. I did forget one from last week, so in fairness to Riz, I'm going to start with that one. It says, another question for the older lifter. Older is in, with the humidity today, I've got bad sinuses, so I'm going to do that. Probably more than a few times. Another question for the older, air quotes, lifter. With training styles and fads always changing, I know you liked training a body part only once per week and sometimes less according to Longevity, which is my online DVD that you can find at teamskip.net. With the second part of Longevity to start filming in the new year, has your view of training changed? I.e., hitting body parts more frequently, as in the fortitude training, which would be Scott Stevenson. Training protocol, and his Mountain Dog does now too. Mountain Dog being John Meadows. I asked you this on Intense Muscle, but thought maybe this site and your new vlog would get some good info too. You know, that DVD, the Longevity DVD, was filmed in, or pretty much all through 2010. So it's been out for about 3.5 years now. So as valuable or great or awesome as the information is and is still applicable, some things certainly do change. I would be a fool to not have my methodology, whether it be training, nutrition, supplementation, etc., evolve over time. Based on, of course, experience and trial and error. I'm a big trial and error guy. So even though everything from skip loading to, you know, my training protocols may start in a certain point, they're going to evolve over time. So do I believe in once a week muscle training, each muscle once a week? I think it's a great idea for most people. Of course, everything, be it training, nutrition, supplementation, it's all individual anyway. So the once a week protocol for training, I think, is a good starting point for almost anybody. What that does is it allows you to destroy a muscle and have plenty of time, usually plenty of time to recover for the average person until you come back around and hit it again the following week. People can hit their weaker body parts more frequently, twice a week. In reality, though, it's my opinion that most people can't recover that quickly if they are trying to train their weak body parts. In my opinion, weak body parts are weak body parts primarily because they don't tend to recover as quickly as every other muscle group, or they're stronger muscle groups. So, let's say if you're training once a week, usually you can handle higher intensity, higher volume. If you go to training twice a week, you want to give it a shot, do a little something different, live on the edge, whatever you want to call it, you can certainly train more frequently. You could train 4 days a week, but that volume and probably the intensity would have to come down as well. Otherwise, you're just going to exceed your recovery abilities, and when you exceed your recovery abilities, clearly you're not growing. you're going to start regressing. So once a week training I still stand by, but it's a starting point for most people. From there you have to factor in recovery variables like gear, how old you are, the type of training you're doing. If you're doing a low volume, high intensity type of training versus a high volume, lower intensity training, those things matter too. What's your nutritional plan? If you're going to do high volume, you're going to struggle if you aren't taking in enough calories or you're trying to stay real lean, versus a guy who doesn't have to deal as much with concerning himself with body fat levels and is just trying to grow as much as he possibly can. So yes, my ideology has changed a little bit. I do go higher volume now than I used to. I don't think it's ridiculously high volume. I do tend to stay myself personally with my own training at training each muscle group once a week. I am going to play with bumping that to 2 times a week here as I start my off season, which will be the beginning of the next DVD called Till I Collapse, which is the sequel to Longevity. But I don't know how I'm going to recover. It may last 2 or 3 weeks, and I may go right back to the once a week training. We'll just have to see, and I don't want to give away too much of what I'm going to do with the next DVD, but I can guarantee you that the information that will be in this new DVD will be probably twice as much information, and everything from skip loading to my training and everything, it will have evolved, and there will be a lot of different things. So if you've seen the Longevity DVD and you think, well, I don't know, I've already seen that, it was pretty good, I got a lot of information out of that, I'm probably not going to get anything out of the new DVD. I do think you're going to miss out if that's how you feel and you pass on the Till I Collapse DVD. Alright, Taylor. Most people are familiar with your contest prep diet approach with the weekly skip loads. How much does your off-season strategy vary from contest prep? Do you still include skip loads, or are they scratched due to higher carb intake throughout the week? Obviously this will vary person to person, but how would you most directly compare off-season versus pre-contest for yourself and clients? Skip loading, for the most part, that it's used pre-contest to help your metabolism stay amped. I use the analogy of pouring gas on a fire once a week, that sort of thing, to keep the metabolism running hot and to keep you leaning down, getting leaner and shedding body fat. In the off-season, it is still used to offset metabolism, but nowhere near as much as during pre-contest prep phase, because you're in a caloric, you have a caloric surplus. So you're taking in more calories than you need, but you still want your metabolism to not adapt to that, what is usually a very consistent and predictable caloric intake. I don't know of too many people who carb cycle in the off season, though some do. It's still not the majority of people who are dieting in the off season. So I myself keep myself and my clients off-season caloric intake relatively stable and consistent throughout the week, and I will still use a skip load. The skip load is based, though, for those of you who know skip loading backwards and forwards, is based on hunger. Will play into how many carbs and how much food you actually eat on your skip load day. So in the off season you're not going to be as hungry because you're not as depleted. Most people will have a higher carbohydrate intake during the week. That is true. So the window for that skip load time on the weekend does tend to be significantly smaller. The foods, that sort of thing, will still remain pretty consistent from prep to the off-season skip loads. There really isn't much of a change there from the off-season to the prep phase. So I want to make sure that I did not miss. Clearly it changes person to person. And again, the higher carb intake, that will tend to keep the amount of carbs and the length of time that you skip load down on the weekends in the off season as well. Still a very vital component though to your off season phase, because not only is it used to keep your metabolism off base, or from adjusting your body to adjusting to the caloric intake during the week, but there's also the added benefit of, you know, the small change in the insulin that your body is kicking out from those excess processed carbs for that skip load. I don't think it's anywhere near the impact as when you're dieting, but I still do think that there's a benefit there, an anabolic benefit, if you will, to keeping a skip load in the off season too. All right, Guru Hansa, I think that's right. Let's say you're skip loading during the weekend. How should Monday through Tuesday workouts look like? Should you train to deplete glycogen more and chase the pump? Okay, I see where you're going on this. Also, when do you recommend cardio in the system? And difference for skip loading between natty clients and PED users. So there's essentially 3 questions in there, and I want to make sure I cover all 3. First, I don't change the training to fit with skip loading. As an example, the training won't be any different on Monday and Tuesday than it will later in the week. What I recommend doing is, and it depends if you're dieting or in the off season, but especially if you're dieting, you're going to want your weaker body parts to be doing those workouts earlier in the week, because you'll be benefiting from the higher caloric and high carb intake, for the first couple days coming off of the skip load. So it's going to be important if your chest and shoulders are weak, that you're going to want to be hitting chest and shoulders earlier in the week and hitting your stronger body parts later in the week, because usually, especially the deeper you get into a dieting phase or a prep contest phase, you're going to be dragging a little ass by the end of the week, sometimes a lot of ass. So if you're trying to train those weak body parts later in the week when you're dragging ass, it's not going to work out very well. The other thing too is body parts that take a higher level of energy, caloric output, back and legs. Sometimes you want those, unless they're real big strengths, to be at the beginning of your week as well. So there is no depletion done. The training doesn't change based on the dieting. It's just a matter of keeping your weaker body part training or your larger muscle groups at the beginning of the week to benefit from the skip load, and your stronger muscle groups or your smaller muscle groups at the end of the week. Let's see, chase the pump, philosophy, and cardio. The cardio really doesn't play into the skip loading as far as timing either. I mean, cardio is cardio. I do believe that fasted cardio is important, but as far as timing on a Monday versus a Thursday or anything like that, it's not going to matter. You're burning calories. So I am a big fasted cardio guy. I know that there will be people watching this that think that, you know, there are many studies that prove otherwise, or that it's no more effective than cardio at any other time of the day. My experience shows me that that's not the case. So where you may be able to find studies to back up your philosophies or your ideology as far as cardio timing, I can find just as many to back up my ideology. And I'm not a big studies guy. Most that know me know that that's the case. I fall back on experience and what has worked for myself and clients over years and years and years. Hundreds and thousands of clients, and myself, being a competitive bodybuilder myself, competing for 20 years. There is absolutely nothing that could prove to me at this point that fasted cardio is not superior to any other form of cardio. My take, my experience, my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. Let's see. The third question is the difference for skip loading between natty clients and performance-enhancing drug users, PED users. Just sounds handicapped when you say it that way, I guess. There is no difference. Metabolically, I mean, you could say that if you're using strong thermos, T3 Clen, things of that nature, sure, that's going to impact, Clen clearly impacts the rate or how efficient your body stores carbohydrate as glycogen. As an example, If you are running clean or getting ready to start a cleanse cycle the next day, a skip load usually needs to be a little bit bigger. I tend to do that for my clients on a regular basis because the same amount of carbs while you're on clean don't seem to fill you out and get packed away as glycogen as when you're off clean. And I think anybody who's watching this that has used clean knows that when you're on clean, you're flatter. You might be leaner, you might look a little drier because it tends to keep water off you, but you're not as full. That's why you'll usually look better if you're in condition and lean enough off a clean versus on it. So that's really the only difference. When you get into things like just regular gear, you know, your AAS, things like that, that doesn't change anything. It also doesn't change, for what it's worth, from male to female. Gender has absolutely nothing to do with skip load. The timing of the skip load, how depleted you are, you know, how quickly you pack away carbs, how efficiently, has nothing to do with gender, has nothing to do with AAS. It has to do with other variables like how hard you train, high volume, low volume, how much cardio you're doing, caloric intake, sleep, what your job is. As an example, if you're on your feet all the time and you're a, you know, I use the ER nurse quite a bit because an ER nurse is usually a kind of a back-breaking job. I mean, they're on their feet all the time, they're struggling to get meals in, constantly go, 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 probably a little higher stress as well. And that all factors into depletion and energy levels and things of that nature. So there's quite a few variables, but AAS has little to nothing to do with it. All right. Skip, in your personal opinion and from the standpoint of someone who has judged bodybuilding shows, what does Kai Greene have to do to beat Phil Heath? He break his legs, slit his throat. I mean, I don't know. From a bodybuilding standpoint, you know, and I'm being funny, kind of making light, but the reality is, to me, and Kai Greene fans probably aren't going to like this a whole lot, and I'll say, look, I'm making this this video, what, about a week out from the Olympia, so you never know what's going to happen, but based on what I know about the two of them, the consistency that Phil Heath shows up at every Mr. Olympia that he's been in, minus one where he was sick, and still took fifth in really good condition. Kai, in my opinion, just won't beat Phil again. I'm certain that Kai and his fans don't appreciate me saying that, but I'm just being honest. Yes, I always admit and acknowledge that I have known Phil for a long time. I competed against him when he first started competing here in Colorado. But I'm a pretty fair, relatively unbiased guy. I mean, I try to call it, I like the guy. I think he's good for the sport. I actually, if I'm being completely honest, like Kai's physique. I think if I had to pick which physique from Phil to Kai that I would most want to look like, it would probably be Kai. He tends to have a smaller midsection. His back is just, I mean, retarded is an understatement. He can keep his hair. I don't particularly want that, and that's coming from a bald guy. A lot of times I get accused of not liking Kai because of personal decisions and his, you know, the things he says and the things he does. I'm a libertarian at heart, staunch actually. So what he does is his business. Whether I think it's good for bodybuilding and sheds a positive light on bodybuilding is another story, I admit. But I'm no angel either, so I have to be careful to not judge him on that. When I'm asked if I think Phil, who's better, Phil or Kai, my answer comes strictly from a physique standpoint. I do not think Kai will ever beat Phil. I just don't see it happening. Again, Phil's consistency, he'll show up in condition. If he doesn't, it'll be the first time since it probably being an amateur. He should go on as long as he wants to, as far as I'm concerned. The second part of the question is, do you believe any of the up-and-comers, with the exception of a big Ramey, have a legit shot at beating him, or do you think he will continue to hold the title until he beats himself? I think he will hold the title until he decides he doesn't want to win it anymore. That's a pretty bold statement, though, considering you never know who's going to come up in the next couple years, who's still an amateur and has only been training for, a handful of years, and is, Phil Heath genetic freak out there that looks pretty and can condition well, head to toe, front to back, that sort of thing. I guess we'll just have to see. The important thing to remember, though, clearly there are some that are making pretty dramatic changes. But when I say some, I mean it's pretty limited. Most of the guys, be it Dexter or even Kai, for that matter, are only making very, very subtle changes to their physique, in my opinion, from year to year. And Phil consistently continues to improve. So I think it's up to him. I think he'll be done when he steps down. And we'll see if in a week that actually plays out, or if I'll be pulling my foot or shoe or leg out of my mouth next week and giving props to Kai because Phil showed up without 2 legs and his neck slid. Skip, what's your opinion on intra-workout supplements, aminos, carbs, etc.? Important, but nothing of what it's being made out to be over the last year or so, in my opinion. I do like to get, and do firmly believe in, BCAAs in your workout water, but things, as an example, glutamine, I consider a waste of money. Creatine, I quit having my clients use well over a year ago. I feel that with creatine, 10 pounds on a bench is about all you're going to get out of creatine. That doesn't equate to extra muscle over the course of a year, in my opinion. Of course, people don't like to turn down 10 pounds on their bench, but I'm looking at supplements from a cost to benefit ratio. Glutamine, useless. NO products, they provide a little bit of a pump. Whoop-de shit. I get a pump from actually training. If you want to take it, cool. I don't think that taking glutamine is going to have or cause any type of health problems. Creatine, I do not believe, is a problem with kidney function. It clearly throws off creatinine levels that makes your doctor freak out when he knows nothing about creatine and how the body metabolizes it, that sort of thing, that it'll push up creatinine levels falsely. So NO, same thing. I mean, you're getting a little bit of a pump, a little added pump. I guess that's okay. It probably equates to, a half of a gram of muscle mass over the course of a year. If you believe that a pump builds muscle, I guess go ahead and use the NO2 products. I believe supplements are good. I use supplements, but I don't like to have people, including myself, waste money on things that I don't think are very effective. So my idea of supplements to work, a good protein powder, of course, is always good. The protein powders have come a long way in just even the last 5 or 6 years, let alone the last 10 to 12. I mean, I've been around long enough to know, and some of you watching this will relate, but I've been around since Dynamic Muscle Builder was put out by Joe Weider in the coffee cans that you had to actually open with a can opener. And to say they tasted like ass, again, is just a terrible understatement. So the nutrition, as far as supplements and protein sources, have come a long way. Especially now, considering the cost has come down considerably. So you've got a higher quality protein powder these days at a relatively inexpensive cost per serving. Most of the higher quality protein powders come out to be gram for gram cheaper than some of the chicken breast sales that you can get out there at your grocery store. So good protein powder, BCAA powders I believe in, especially intra-workout with some carbs. I don't think that the carbohydrates while you're training need to be high-tech or fancy or have a real long cool name to them. A lot of times I will have my clients just put Gatorade in their workout water along with their BCAAs. That's about it. You can always use a good multivitamin. ALA on skip load days is decent. Mountain Dog has a GDA that I would say is pretty good quality as well. So if you wanted to use that on a skip load day, that wouldn't be a bad idea either. How far off are we from having a classic bodybuilding division in the NPC IFBB? Good question. Is there some reason in your opinion it hasn't happened yet, especially considering the fans love to romanticize over the guys from the 70s, 80s, and early 90s? I would actually like this, but here's the thing. I'm an old guy that romanticizes about the physiques from the 80s. So I'm guilty, and I think that does play a part in the fact that I would love to see it. I do have clients abroad that compete in classic bodybuilding, and I think there's a huge misconception that for most people, that classic bodybuilding just means small. Relatively speaking, sure, they're smaller than the high-ranking amateurs at the national level in bodybuilding, and of course the pros. But the look, you basically have two schools of thought for bodybuilding. You have get as huge as you can possibly get, freak people out, make old women want to throw up, and younger women say that they would never sleep with you. Then you have the classic bodybuilding or kind of pretty boy look. The Frank Zane or I don't even like to use Frank as an example, even though he clearly fits that. But a better look to me would be along the lines of like a Francis Benefato, a Bob Paris, and clearly those guys were big by bodybuilding standards, but they weren't big by 2014 bodybuilding standards. If you can get that look and you can be a little smaller, and that's what the class, for those that don't know, the classic bodybuilding puts a limit on how much you can weigh versus your height. So, I think it will help to keep guts out of the equation. Look, is it going to overtake bodybuilding and the bodybuilding subculture that believes more is better and get as big as you can, no rules, that sort of thing? Of course not. Is it a nice addition considering we already have a lot of other shit that we don't like as bodybuilders? Bodybuilders complain all the time about everything from women's physique to men's physique or mankini or men's bikini or whatever derogatory comment you can come up with to show that your disdain for that particular division. Bikini, figure, all that sort of stuff. So I think it would be a nice addition at the shows. I think it would be a great way to make the shows even longer than they already are, and quite possibly maybe even more boring. I don't know. It would be nice, just as a little offshoot, I don't want to get off on a tangent too much, but to piggyback off of that, it would be nice to see promoters start to run two-day shows. Trying to cram all these divisions into one day is really tough, not only on the competitors, which is obvious, but the poor people in the audience. It just can get so bad. And I do have somebody at the front door right now ringing my doorbell, so I'm going to see if Matt's really good with editing this. Not good. I'm in the middle of filming something for my work. So whatever you're selling, no offense, but I'm not interested.
I'll come back later.
No, I'll come back. Seriously. I'm all set. If I need you, I'll call you. I was as nice as I could be. I love it when people come to my house and offer me a service that they swear that I need. I just don't know about it yet. I haven't heard about it, because if I hear about it, then I'm going to want it. Anyway, I don't need CenturyLink. I'm pretty sure that that's a cell phone or some shit. Alright. How and why did you come to the conclusion to wear Wrangler jeans and a cowboy hat at your daughter's wedding last month? Really? Well, it was a country theme. It wasn't my idea. It was my daughter's idea. Country theme for an outdoor wedding on Labor Day, beautiful day. So I had no problem pulling out my Lucchese's and donning my Wrangler shirt with pearl snaps and my leather Stetson cowboy hat. However, I did not and do not wear Wrangler jeans. Those were Rock Revival. They don't necessarily go with cowboy boots and a Wrangler shirt, but that's not the point. I still look good. And if you don't believe me, I can post a picture for you. What drug, in your opinion, is most imperative in becoming a successful national level or IFBB pro bodybuilder? Tren or Real GH? I think it's funny that you have to actually note that it's real. Because Real GH is quite a bit different. Anyway, and hard to get a hold of. Oh, gee. You know, Tren, the nasty contest prep drug that, you know, makes you an irritable asshole, can't sleep, no one wants to be around you, you hate life, but you get into ridiculous condition. Or GH. Well, see, this is a tough question because Tren is the old standby. Far more people use Tren than they do GH. Simply, sometimes because people can't afford it, especially Real GH. I think half of the people out there using growth, it's fake. And they're paying a decent amount of money for shit that isn't even real. Real GH, in my opinion, is especially for an older bodybuilder, huge. So, you know, I'd have to easily put that on Real GH. Too many people take and use Tren from local to state bodybuilders, and they're never gonna cross that line, get to the next level, that sort of thing. GH is huge. There are other compounds too, but I wasn't asked about them, so we'll talk about those. Gee, is that it for this week? I do believe it is. Let's see, my question and answer thread, if you want to post questions, apparently I'm still messed up from the CenturyLink guy. We're going to do this every week. I'm going to have my videos up, posted, going live on Wednesdays. So you have the weekend and Monday to get questions onto my Q&A thread on Projectbodybuilding.com. So look for that. The more questions, the better. Bodybuilding questions are good. Training, nutrition, supplementation, gear, philosophy, ideology type questions. I like to discuss things, and that's a lot of my writing on Elite FTS, is how the brain works with for motivation, you know, success in the sport, things like that, how you're perceived, how you carry yourself. Those are all really important topics to me. But don't think you can't ask about trucks, guns, politics, anything else. I think that's going to do it for this week. Appreciate you watching. I'm Skip, and I'm out.